Alright, so the first question is why conduct valuations? And there's two main situations which call for a need for valuations. The first of these are internal, and the second are market-related issues. Now, some examples of internal company issues might include a situation where there are negotiations concerning equity allocations, for example. And these negotiations require a basis for discussions, and the valuation is key in this situation. Another example might be after significant market fluctuation, for example. Valuation might be needed to update the market portfolio. And last, it might be needed to increase communication between the manager of a fund, for example, and its partners. Think of it as a progress report of sorts. Now, for market-related factors, there's also a few examples of this. For example, a startup might need a valuation to raise new capital. A venture fund may need a valuation to guide their investments in the future. And also there's situations where valuations can be used to facilitate business development transactions. Some examples of this include mergers, acquisitions, LBOs, MBOs, and IPOs. So these are just a few instances of many where valuations are very much needed or valuable both inside a company or in the surrounding market. Considering this importance, venture valuation entered the market to help early ventures obtain much more accurate valuations, despite the difficulty normally to obtain this accurate information. Now, in order to determine a valuation, it's important to understand that many assumptions must be made regarding growth drivers and risk factors. In other words, there are significant uncertainties involved with this process, and projections must be made to come to an accurate result. These assumptions are generally difficult to make in any valuation that we're talking about. However, they are certainly enhanced when valuing young companies. Obviously, there are many scenarios that exist with very different positive and negative outcomes. And this is one of the assumptions that must be made on both ends of that spectrum. Also, margin of error is inherent in valuation, and it's even larger when we're talking about young companies. Finally, uncontrollable factors will also undoubtedly affect the company, and therefore the valuation as well. Venture valuation entered this market and tried to address these difficulties by providing a valuation range. And they accomplished this by fully understanding the risk factors and drivers surrounding a specific company that they're working with, and they applied these factors to their valuation. And by the end of the process, after fully understanding all of these factors, they were able to come to what they believed was a very competitive, accurate range of valuations that they could give a company, as well as recommendations given the research that they did. So now I'm going to talk about the valuation process of companies in highly uncertain environments, and I believe that this is very relevant to today's economy, which is fluctuating tremendously. And also this is relevant to the case that we're talking about because Gene Data, the company that we're evaluating, is dealing with a very highly uncertain environment, mainly due to the fact that it's a high-growth company, a young company. So the first step in the valuation process is to contact the company and mandate information. After receiving this information and reviewing it, venture valuation conducts extensive research. They want to be the most knowledgeable on the company that they're dealing with. Finally, they do something that's unique in the industry, and that's a workshop with the management. And this helps assimilate all the information and prepare them to make an accurate projection when finally conducting their valuation, which is the next step. The final step, the sixth step, is to produce this final valuation, present it to the company, and give final recommendations. Now I'm going to talk about the venture valuation methodology, and I'm going to do this to go into a little more depth about valuing companies in highly uncertain environments like I talked about in the last slide. So we'll turn to this venture valuation methodology, which is a little more in-depth look at it. The first step, and as we said before, you're going to start with a comprehensive assessment of the company. and looking at the company itself and everything around it. So examples of doing this might include looking at the company's vision or strategy, looking at its intellectual property. In the case of Gene Data, we're looking at the specific science and technology involved with the company. And we're also going to look at the business model. Other important factors include management team capabilities, especially when looking at the potential for this company to grow and whether that management team will be able to handle that increased workload, increased employees, just more to deal with. Finally, the financial situation and its stage of development are extremely important in this process, and also looking at smaller factors specifically related to the company that you're looking at that might not always be looked at with other companies. The next step involves a comprehensive risk analysis, which requires obtaining a deep understanding of the company's specific risk factors and value drivers. And I touched on that a little bit earlier, but this is probably the most important step, especially with venture valuations process. Finally, the last step is to perform a discounted cash flow analysis and also a market comparables analysis in finalizing this valuation range. And once you've done this, you can provide an accurate valuation to the company, or in this case, Gene Data.